wasn't too long ago when property taxes in Indiana were in chaos. For school districts, the revenue stream was certain, budgets were easier to fill. But the way the state figures out how much your property was worth would cause huge swings in property taxes. A manageable bill one year might double the next. That's why in 2008, state lawmakers passed the property tax cap, a limit on the amount of tax that you pay on property that you own, and also a limit on the amount of property taxes that local governments can collect. For most school districts, the flow of revenue hasn't slowed all that much, but in about a third of school districts across Indiana, the flow of revenue looks a little bit more like a trickle. So let me try and give you a little bit of a sense of how the property tax caps in Indiana work and how they impact school finance. So think of this as a community that supports a school district, and each one of these little Dixie cups here represents a property owner, a home or a business that supports the local school districts with their property tax dollars, and I filled each one with a little bit of water to represent the money that they're supposed to pay in property taxes. So if you look at an Indiana school corporation's budget, about 2/3 of the dollars are flowing in from the state to cover major operating expenses, big ticket stuff like salaries and benefits. Now, those dollars, local property tax dollars, well, those are coming in to cover 3 different types of expenses out of 3 big funds. The transportation fund covers school buses, fueling them, replacing them, generally keeping them on the road. The capital projects fund covers building expenses, patching roofs, fixing furnaces, sometimes technology upgrades. And then there's the debt service fund. This is kind of like the district's credit card or its mortgage payment. It's how the district pays down debt on its buildings. I'd remember this guy. He becomes important later. Districts fill up these funds with property tax dollars, so they send property owners a bill. Pay your taxes. But let's say this owner of a $100,000 home gets a $2,000 property tax bill, just an example. So under Indiana's property tax caps, this guy doesn't have to pay a penny above $1,000 on his property taxes. The cap is 1% of a home's value. So a portion of those taxes goes to the school district, and the other portion he gets to keep, thanks to the property tax caps. It's also money that school districts could have gotten, and this money adds up. Last year, school districts lost $245 million to the property tax caps. So where does the rest of the money go, the property taxes that are collected? Well, to find out, let's brew up a pot. About 40% of the revenue flowing out of that pot right now will go into the district's debt service fund to pay down its debt obligations. A little less than a third goes into the capital projects fund to pay for buildings and maintenance, and about a quarter goes into the transportation fund. Now, this corporation has lost about 10% of its revenue, so it's going to have to make cuts from somewhere to make up for the lost property tax revenue. But let's add in a twist. Remember the debt service fund? You know, the one we were kind of calling a school district's credit card? That's this guy right here. And starting in July 2014, this fund, this cup, becomes state protected. Now what that means is that before either of these two guys, either of these two cups see a single drop of local property tax revenue, this cup right here has to be full to the brim. Now in a district that's lost 1 in 10 property tax dollars to the caps, maybe even 1 in 5 property tax dollars to the property tax caps, there's not going to be enough cash to go around. You're going to have to cut from somewhere. You might have heard of districts scaling back on building repairs and maintenance, and you've heard a lot more about school districts like Muncie and Franklin Township cutting back on transportation costs. All of it to make sure that in the near future, these debt obligations are paid in full. No more minimum payments on the credit card, so to speak. But there is another option. Ask voters to raise their own property taxes, because property tax revenues collected under a referendum are not subject to the property tax caps. It can help close some of the budget gaps. And in the past 5 years, school districts asking the voters for help have succeeded about half of the time. But some school districts say property tax caps have tied their hands. The yearly losses to the caps have grown by $100 million in just the past 3 years. But proponents say that's the point of property tax caps, to tip the scale in property owners' favor and let them decide whether school districts are being good stewards of their tax dollars. So they send property owners a bill. pay your taxes. But, God bless America. Okay,